There's no agreement close with any team. The window's only just opened, and from January the 1st, he has 6 months left on his contract, and that's the point. That's the trigger point at which he can then start talking directly to overseas clubs, and Arsenal don't need to be involved in those conversations. Look, the DC United link has been long-standing. That I think was first reported by the Washington Post in, I think it was August 2019. So that's been there, and they've sort of been keeping tabs on the situation from time to time. Basically, if there's a chance that he might go somewhere else, please keep us informed. It's that sort of thing. And Fenerbahce, I mean, that link is there every window for about the last 10 years. So their interest again is long-standing. But my understanding is that the Ozil camp want to take their time with this. The next sort of 7 to 10 days, they're going to look at the picture, look at the offers, try and get a little bit more detail from these clubs now, because it's gone from a stage of, look, if you're thinking of leaving, we might be interested and we could potentially do something like this, to nailing down numbers and details and lengths of contract and all that sort of thing. So I think it's fleshing out those options over the next week or so, and then working out really where he wants to go. My information is that he is quite torn about his next move, what league he wants to play in, planning for post retirement. He's 32 years old. He's getting to a stage where he's got to think about life after playing, and what he prioritises and where he goes from there is the conversations he's going to be having with his agent and his family over the next 10 days or so.
And then in terms of just your opinion, where do you think he's best suited to? Because again, when I see the name Mesut Ozil on any squad sheet, I get excited because this is a high, quality player that we know exactly what he's capable of, putting aside, I suppose, the last year or so that he's had. So where do you think he's better suited to at this point?
Well, there's a strong case for the MLS. For a number of reasons, not least, I think he would retain the ability, and still does retain the ability, to be a huge success in that league on the pitch. But off the pitch, he's a colossus in terms of his marketing power. It was one of the reasons why he signed that and got that big contract, £350,000 a week at Arsenal, who, that was a shattered their wage structure, that deal, because in part of the off-field power and the draw that he has, and clearly going to the MLS, that would go to another level. I mean, with the greatest respect to the MLS, it isn't the highest standard of football, and there is an argument for whether he'd want to stay in Europe to try and continue maybe in the Champions League or to go. I mean, there was talk about maybe one or two Italian clubs looking at him, whether he'd go to another league like Serie A and try and play at the highest level in Europe for another year or two. It really comes down to what he wants to prioritise. Does he still want to try and go for the biggest prizes and win the major honours in Europe? Or is he starting to think about the sort of end of his career and longevity? And really, he could go to the MLS and be a star there for several years. You couldn't necessarily see him doing that if he went to an Italian club, or even maybe Fenerbahce, where, of course, he's idolised there, but it would be a case of thinking, well, maybe a couple of years. But I think he's always been someone who's looked at the longer term picture. He's been at Arsenal. Say what you like about what's happened there and how the situation's unravelled. He has been there for 7 years. It is a big part of his career, the biggest part of his career. So he does think about things in those terms when he makes his next move.
And then finally, just now that we seem to be getting to the beginning of the end at Arsenal for Mesut Ozil, just looking, I suppose, in recent times when we saw the struggles that Arsenal were having, we saw them languishing way past, the top 10 in the Premier League. We were wondering, I mean, jokes were floating around if they should, be flirting with relegation anytime soon. And you're just wondering, who could Arsenal bring on to give us spark, And I was just thinking, Mesut Ozil is still there. He's already being paid. He is still a quality player, as we're saying. Are you kind of surprised that even when it seemed like they were nearing rock bottom, they didn't reach out to him?
Well, obviously they couldn't do it because they didn't register him for the Premier League and the Europa League squads, and it was only this month where that could change, and they can make changes to those squad and bring him back into the fold. Look, I'm with you. I think, particularly in that period when they were struggling and playing with a number 10, by the way, during periods, having changed the system, things had got so bad that I cannot see how it had got any worse if you'd given Mesut Ozil 20 minutes in a game. that you were losing, particularly when you think about the way the team struggled. They've struggled for creativity, scoring goals, creating chances has been a big problem for them. Now, we all know that he doesn't necessarily fit into Arteta's sort of mold of what he wants from a player in that position. He wants high press, he wants high energy. I think it's been quite significant that Arsenal's improvement of late has been by getting legs in the team, really runners. You know, if you look at the job that Emil Smith-Rowe has done, Joe Willock has done when he's come on, Martinelli when he's come back into the team, they've all been trying to inject that energy higher up the pitch, really trying to press and just create some fresh dynamism in those attacking positions. And Ozil is a tremendously skillful player, arguably the most skillful player in the squad. But if there is a criticism of him, it is that work rate off the ball isn't always there. And that would explain in part why he was left out. Obviously, there's all the off-field issues, the fact that he didn't take the pay cut with the vast majority of the first team squad. I think it's often forgotten that although we talk about fitting Arteta's system, he started the first 10 Premier League games under Mikel Arteta when he replaced Unai Emery. And it was only after the March lockdown and the conversation about the pay cut that he decided not to take, on a point of principle, by the way. He spent that money since in local charity work and helping feed vulnerable children over Christmas. So it wasn't really about the money. It was about, for his point of view, it was about knowing where that money was going and why the club were doing what they were doing. There's obviously the issue with Gunnosaurus as well, and the mascot being laid off, and he paid to bring him back. So everyone talks about the sort of the money side of it with Mesut, and that he's money driven, but his actions speak louder than that, I think. So there's all of that going on in the background, but you do have to wonder that if they can't find an agreement in January, and maybe he signs a deal with a club that kicks in the summer, in the second half of the season, he would want to finish his career on a high. I know he wants to go out having played for Arsenal again, having come back into the fray. He doesn't want to spend a year in solitude, never playing, never contributing anything. He has been there a long time, and it would be, I think, the ideal way for Ozil to end his career is to sign a deal now for the summer, but then play for Arsenal in these final 6 months and help them climb as high up the table as he can.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.